The Kremlin won't admit how many soldiers have died in Ukraine, but researchers have now identified 30,000 dead Russians by name.
Here's a summary of the article.
Researchers have identified more than 30,000 Russians killed fighting in Ukraine. Publicly, Russian officials have admitted to losing no more than 6,000 men since last year's all-out invasion of Ukraine. Researchers working with the BBC say they have now identified, by name, more than 30,000 dead Russian soldiers, including more than 1,300 in the last 2 weeks alone. An independent Russian news outlet that has partnered with the BBC's Russian service, says its figure of 30,000 dead, while certainly an undercount, is not a mere estimate. More than 5,600 inmates have been identified as killed in Ukraine. After a separate analysis last month found that, as of May 2023, at least 47,000 Russian soldiers had been killed in Ukraine, a finding based on analyzing excess mortality rates in Russia. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told reporters he was unfamiliar with the widely publicized report, claiming that the only accurate source for such information was the Defense Ministry. At least 9,000 civilians have also been killed in Ukraine, according to the United Nations, most in areas targeted by Russian forces.
This post received a score of 13,000, with an upvote ratio of 95%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
It should be taken into account that these are only those that have public confirmation of death, which is exactly what researchers observe. So there's obituaries and so on. There are also missing persons, of which there are incredibly many, and those whose deaths were not publicized in any way, convicts as an example. I think it is worth mentioning that the authorities of my country also strongly discourage local media from publishing the obituary of the dead.
Also, the Russian government has another incentive to not declare soldiers dead. If they're missing, Russia doesn't have to pay their families.
As of Feb, the Pentagon estimated around 3,300,4,300, and that's just dead. Injured is well over 230,000. Such a waste. They need to give up, or go home.
And that is before the absurd and disgusting grind at Bakhmut.
Photos of Bakhmut look like colorized WW1 pictures. Absolutely crazy in modern times.
Literally, Ypres vs Bakhmut, Verdun vs Bakhmut.
I genuinely can't tell which is which.
Putin said Russia have lost nothing of value. Russians continue to keep Putin in power for 20+ years.
Well, they lost any respect they had left.
I mean, Russians did elect Putin in 2000 and probably 2004. By 2012 they were mostly fraudulent, but he was voted in at least the first 2 times before the regime really consolidated dictatorial power around 2008 to 2012.
In 2000s it was about finally getting someone young and not drunk. In 2004 it was post-Great Growth. In 2007-2008 things became much clearer, but people chose not to see.
Yeah. Obama had hoped Medvedev would grow some balls and turn on Putin, but when he went up for re-election back in 2012 they knew it was over for Russian democracy.
It was over before that. Medvedev was chosen because he got no balls.
Yeah. I definitely remember at the time the media saying the Medvedev was just a placeholder for Putin until he could run again and change the law.
I've been helping in Ukraine since the beginning of this invasion. There's one Ukrainian family in the east that lost touch with their son after Russians moved into their village, but they have bones that they found on their property that they think might be his. That's most likely the closest they'll come to knowing his fate aside from him randomly showing up one day. That's just the kind of reality that some families are living because of the Russians.
Can't they send a piece of that bone for a DNA test?
I asked the same thing and the response was, "That'll never happen." I left it at that and kind of just assumed that meant that either it's because of the war those kind of resources just wouldn't be available, or that with it being a lower income family from a village of Ukraine it's just not in the cards for them. So that's it. That's the end of the situation. 3 generations just gone and that's it. End of story.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.